Hi, welcome to Groove Diner After Dark. I'm Buddy Gibbons. Tonight my special guest is Kelly King, writer from Drumhead Magazine, drummer extraordinaire, coffee aficionado, vegan. Yeah, that's pretty much him. Really good dude. Stick around. Seriously, if you guys had any idea how many times I did that intro, I always do them a few hours in advance, and I kept slamming things and hitting things. I finally just gave up today. It's just what it is. I got quite a few questions before I ever got here. Toby, hi, good to see you. Here or Facebook, Twitch would be the preferred. So if you can get people streaming over on Twitch, that'd be great. If not, everybody's welcome here. Keith, get over it. Take your Ativan. Dan, YouTube isn't streaming because I'm not streaming to YouTube. I am uploading to YouTube after the fact, not streaming live on it. There's a delay problem in the technical things, so we're not doing streaming live to YouTube. That may become a separate thing as we move forward. So it's good to be back after a week off. I wanted to take a quick moment and say thank you to everybody who reached out to me on the passing of my father-in-law. I did travel back to Alabama very safely, I might add. And I've been quarantined since I got back here. But I traveled back and saw family and did the things that you do when someone in a close family member passes. So it was a very challenging but necessary trip, and I really appreciated so much love and support from so many of you. Thank you very much. Doug Tan, how are you, my friend? And just because Doug is telling truth, I'm just going to put that up on the screen. It has to happen, right? How you doing, man? Reggie, good to see you, my friend. Nice. Thank you to join. Thank you for joining. See, it's been that kind of day. My voice is just not working. My mouth is not working properly. It's just kind of crazy. I can't tell who all's here because I can't see a count tonight. For some reason, the counter's not working, and I can't see who's here. So if you're here, please say hi. I love knowing who's here watching. Tonight, my guest is Kelly King. As I said in the intro, he is a writer for Drumhead. He is a tremendous drummer. Very likely the most self-deprecating guy that I know, and we've been friends now for several years, and we met backstage at the Guitar Center Drum Off finals in the VIP thing where we all hang out. We'll talk about that a little bit here in just a few minutes. I'm really excited to have him talk to us tonight about what he does, because one of the themes of this whole show, ever since we switched from Late Night Learning to Groove Diner, has been, what is it that we do during the pandemic to diversify? What is it that we do as drummers to diversify, and how that's an incredibly important subject that gets overlooked so much of the time. And as you guys all know, this is not a show about blowing chops. Yeah, we're going to do a little drumming. And in fact, tonight, I've got a new segment I'm introducing after we talked with Kelly for a little while that is very specifically drum-oriented. And Toby, you actually helped me come up with the topic for the very first one. So you'll see it later. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring Kelly in. Let's see if I can find Kelly over here. And we're going to talk with Kelly. I'm going to start, though, by showing you guys a little bit of his playing. He worked with Dwight Yoakam and Everclear, and he's worked with Rihanna and David Cook from American Idol. These are just four that are off the top of my head. We're going to talk about a bit of that. How you doing, Kelly?
Hey man, I'm good. How are you?
Good. This is live. This is live. This is what it's like live.
Let's start with that new segment you talked about. Let's just flip everything around.
Yeah, seriously, we should probably do that, right? Oh my gosh.
Well, thanks for having me on your show, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for being here, man. Kelly and I, we did meet many years ago now. It's been 4 or 5 years ago, right? That we met backstage at the at the drum off finals thing upstairs. I've been trying to remember this exactly. What was it that made us talk to each other? Do you remember what that was? I mean, there's 100 guys around. Why did we talk
I'm sure it was a mutual friend that introduced us, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't either.
Exactly. That's one of the best things about drum off. I mean, there's a lot of great players, and so many great players have come out of that thing. But the guys that kind of live in LA and our community that we know each other, it's always a good time to get together and socialize and maybe share a drink. I've got some fairly good drinking stories from hanging out with some guys there, but maybe that's
I would be shocked if you didn't.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, no,
but it was great. To like you said, we've been friends for a while now, and part of a whole network of drummers who not only it's not just about the playing, but we share a lot of things with each other, which is one of the great things about LA. There really is that community there.
Absolutely,
very supportive.
Absolutely, I completely agree. It's funny. The supportive nature of drummers is something that's truly unique among musicians. And we've talked about this in great detail before, but the simple fact is you invited me to multiple breakfast things. What kind of guy are you? You get up for breakfast. It just makes no sense.
Guy with a kid.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, you didn't have a kid at the time. How old is your kid now? 2? Is she 2?
She's just past a year now.
Just past a year. Okay. Well, see, 2020 was just so nutty. So that's good. Congratulations on that. She's a sweetheart.
Thanks.
For sure.
Yeah,
enjoy seeing her on our Friday conversations.
She shows up.
She does. It's pretty awesome, actually. Be sure, gang, that's here, everybody, if you've got questions for Kelly, don't hesitate to ask them. We'll get you on screen here and chit-chatting, okay? So, Kelly, tell me a little bit about yourself. You and I have something in common in that we're both from a very small town. Tell me a bit about growing up in your small town, your version of my hometown, and what possessed you to make the move out here and things like that. Give me a little bit of history there, if you would, sir.
Yeah, it was surprising when we got to know each other to find out that we were both from such really small towns. My hometown, Brookfield, Missouri, is under 5,000 people now, I think. So it was a great place.
The size of mine.
Okay. For what we wanted to do, for somebody who really felt early on that we wanted to be involved in music, drumming specifically, there weren't really any opportunities. I mean, that was regulated to weekender guys who played at the local watering hole. And I still know some of those guys that play in my hometown, and they're great. Randall Switzer's a great drummer. So it exists. For whatever reason, I just had an idea that I wanted to push myself a little harder. I was lucky when I was in high school. A kid from St. Louis had moved to our hometown, Ron Johnson, who's now a drummer. He plays with, I think it's the Air Force Band, and has done that as a career. Great drummer.
You got to be a good drummer to play in that band. That's very serious players.
And he not only inspired me because he was such a great player, he was at such a completely different level, but he took me under his wing, and he helped me audition for jazz band when I wanted to do that. And later we roomed together in college, and he kind of showed me what was going on with the drum line and helped me audition for the drum line. So even that sense of community was there back then, but I definitely knew that I wanted to try to do it full time. And I've always wanted to sort of test myself and see what I could do. And there's a number of times where I've, fallen on my ass because of that, but that's just part of the deal if you're going to go for it.
It most definitely is. We were talking earlier about this, so I'm going to share my story now because that's as good as slow pitch as it's going to get right there for me. But so I was playing a show. I was subbing with a big band. So big band is not really my strong suit in the first place. But I was to drive down to San Diego and meet up with this big band. And it was in 2 shows in front of about 10,000 people per show. And I got the charts a day ahead of time, so I'd kind of prepped it a bit and was ready. And I was taking my own drums down. Well, I had gotten incorrect directions to the show, to the venue. So I was, going to be there 3 hours early, right? Instead, I was 10 minutes late showing up to the venue, period. So then I'm having to throw everything together, and it's kind of like this live show where you just never know what's going to happen. And we're going through it. We got almost no rehearsal. I'll never forget the guys that played trumpet played in the London Symphony on the Star Wars soundtrack. I was like,
that's cool.
That was kind of blowing my mind. And anyway, so we're getting ready, and I'm counting off, and I'm clicking. I've got a click going, and I'm like, okay, it's going to be all right. And the first couple of songs were not great, just trying to get through it, right? I was just kind of, oh my. And then the next thing you know, I'm looking at the chart, and I counted off a song that's in 6 in 4 in front of 10,000 people. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what's happening. The bass player is who had called me to sub, so I knew the bass player. And I'm looking at him like, Tony, help me get this, help me make this a 6. And he was like, you screwed it up, you fix it. So we're having this conversation on stage. The trumpet players nearly fell backwards off the bandstand trying to find one. It was just really awful. And the guitar player, I'm pretty sure, still hates me. But we went to the green room after this first show, and I was the last one getting there because I finally had time to set up my drums. And this green room was kind of down that way, and I was standing at the top of the stairs. And I went, all together now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Broke the room apart, except for the guitar player. But that was an awful moment for me. Just talk about a crash and burn. Oh, wow.
Everybody's had something like that. And what's great is that you are creating, we've had this discussion, not on your show, but you're creating a platform where people can sort of tell the truth of what it's like to be a professional. Everybody falls on their butt at some point.
Absolutely. That's very true.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that end up watching this, be it live tonight or over the next few days, are up-and-comers that are really wanting to do what we do, what you do. And that, the question that I have for you is, when you were growing up in that little town in Missouri and you were pushing yourself, there is something in you, and this isn't that big question I ask you yet. We'll get to that in a minute. But, how did you find your way into the music scene that is LA? It's just really difficult to figure your way into it. And you did it quickly and at a very high level. How did that happen for you?
Well, I'm glad that that's your perception of how it happened.
I
don't know that I would agree with that. But everybody kind of notices the triumphs of other people without those challenging points like you just shared. I had moved from Missouri to Dallas. I played in Dallas around that scene for 15 years and was pretty comfortable, but realized at some point that I had not been a part of touring with a major act or recording with one. And that was really beyond just playing drums and having fun doing that. That's what inspired me. And at some point, I just realized that age was going to catch up with me. And if I didn't make a big jump at that time, I was never, ever going to do it. I was going to be either too comfortable or too scared to do it. And it was still pretty frightening. I think the thing that you and I share with probably all of our friends is that we were so scared when we moved here because
oh my gosh, yes.
It's hard enough to get a revenue stream going playing music for anybody Absolutely. In any part of the world.
Absolutely.
But when you move where the competition is really tough and that you're bailing on everything that you've got supporting you, friends and gigs and all that, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah,
and
it's incredibly intense.
Yeah, I had the good fortune of I didn't go to UNT, but I studied privately with Henry Oxtel and Ed Soph, who taught at UNT, as well as a number of great drummers in Dallas. One of which, I feel like I'm mentioning a lot of names.
Go for it.
One of which was this guy, Rob Afsharian, who is an amazing drummer. There's so many great drummers. A lot of the reason for that is because UNT pulls so many people in. But Rob, in addition to having given me some lessons, when I was discussing moving, he said, well, I know some people because in LA, almost everybody knows somebody that's gone to either Berkeley, UNT, or Miami. And so Rob very kindly gave me 2 phone numbers and 2 names of friends of his. Those guys were Blair Cinta and Jason Sutter, and said, give them a call when you get into town, which is what I did. Both were kind enough to meet with me over lunch, and we started being friends from there. And I have to really, well, both of them helped me a lot, but I have to credit Jason Sutter because within, I think, a month of moving to LA, Jason had gotten, for me moving to LA, Jason had gotten the Chris Cornell gig.
Right.
And because of that, he was luckily unavailable when he got called to do a new video for a semi-known artist named Rihanna.
Right.
And
Semi-known, yeah.
Luckily, luckily Stacey Jones and some of the other guys who were getting called weren't available, and Sutter just said to the guy that he knew, this kid's in town and he looks kind of rock and roll and he seems to know what he's doing. And I saw him play, on some videos. I haven't seen him play live, but check him out. And so right away, I found myself on set with Chris Applebaum and John Harden and all these guys who were doing it. And in between takes, hanging out with Jay-Z doing the Umbrella video.
Crazy.
And the great thing about that is that video started out where I had all kinds of close-ups, and you can barely see me in that video.
I was about to ask, did you make an actual appearance in the video?
Yeah. So, what was sort of the thing that gave me instant street cred in LA,
right.
I was really barely in. But it was really fun, and I would say if there's one thing I can say my career has been about, it's been about the experience. I'll do something even if I don't know that I can do a great job. I'll do my best, but because I want to have the experience of doing it.
Sure.
That's all we're going to take away from us.
You and I actually share a strange little Rihanna connection because I worked on a recording of hers and Kelly Clarkson and Katy Perry. I did several of those. I never say this out loud. It's really strange to hear. But it wasn't. I never met them. I never laid eyes on any of those people. It was their management company that hired me, and I went in and tracked what ultimately Pink was one of them as well. Ultimately, one of the songs ended up being a master that I played on. Otherwise, it was all just demo stuff. So you'll never see me. Even saying it out loud sounds so phony to me, but you'll never see me putting in my resume or on my bio, drummer for Rihanna at all. Mm-hmm. I would never do that. And I know that's your MO as well. You would never do that either because it's not really your gig and it's disrespectful to the guys whose gig it actually is to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And Mike Reed, who's the guy playing with Rihanna now, is amazing. I think he's a Philadelphia drummer. And you also reminded me, you mentioned at the top, I've worked with Dwight Yoakam. That's only in the capacity of the band that I play with, King Leg, has a relationship with Dwight, and he's worked with us, and he's very kindly had us open a lot of gigs, including the LSD tour. But his drummer, Mitch Marine, who's a great drummer, is also a friend from Dallas, and he's the reason that I'm on the King Leg gig because he put my name in the hat for the audition.
Right, and LSD, by the way, is not a drug reference.
Not that drug.
It is Lucinda Williams, right?
Steve Earle
and Dwight Yoakam.
Dwight Yoakam.
Yeah, so that, just for the record, he's not saying that he's out, getting happy. I actually, I think I might have the Dwight video now. Maybe let's see. That was a seriously live video, man.
I think I'm nauseous from watching that video.
I love it though. That's Everclear for those of you that weren't clear about who that was at the end. So that first half with Dwight Yoakam, that actually looks like a really neat, fun moment to me. Getting to be in that little intimate environment, playing with him.
Yeah, that was in Houston. It was a radio show. The only thing that I remember about that gig is that the count in, like for whatever the first tune was 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's a big trash can hit. Right. And all of the monitors were completely feeding back.
Excellent.
And so the only way that we could get through the first few songs was Freddie Herrera, who's the bass player. I was watching him, and our body motions would allow us to stay in time because we could read the set list, and there was no hearing anything. It was just whatever that high-pitched ring was the whole time. Wow. But yeah, it was a fun show, and I will say of a lot of the people that I've gotten to play with, those Everclear fans are really amazing people. Like, they love their band like almost nobody does.
That's amazing to hear. I wouldn't have thought they would have a particularly rabid fan base at this point in time. They are, man.
Ooh. Yeah.
That's very cool, actually. Really into it. Well, that actually, taking a step beyond being a player, because obviously you're a great player and you've spent a lot of time becoming a great player. One of the things that's kind of a dirty little secret that we all deal with is that it's hard to make a living just playing drums. Now, my own story is that for 10 years, I've been doing nothing but. Now, some of that means other musical avenues, but it's largely drum related. Prior to that, I had a website design company. I trapped skunks under houses. I did all sorts of things to make ends meet. Tell me how that has impacted you, becoming a writer for one of the premier drum magazines in the world, Drumhead in particular. Has COVID impacted that in any way? Do you find that you're having to do things differently now? I'd like to know what your thoughts are on all of that.
Yeah, I think COVID has, affected everybody in a major way. Sure. But the entertainment more than, I shouldn't say that. The entertainment industry and the music industry severely has taken a hit because we just can't work. Most all of our money is generated from situations that have an audience. At least for me, I'm not a session drummer who's there in the studio or in my home studio. Like, our group of friends, we're now calling you to say, buddy, can we book some time in your studio? Because we have to have like a small, great studio that we can come to.
Yeah, right. I love that you guys are calling me now too. So I appreciate that.
It definitely has. It's been a difficult time for everybody. So I don't feel comfortable highlighting anything that my family's had to deal with. But yeah, it's been tough. I would say that having multiple revenue streams is the reality of the modern music industry. And
absolutely.
Almost every single drummer I know, including the most famous, the guys who are on the covers of the magazines and who do the big tours, they're not making all of their income doing what you're seeing them do. That's the really smart ones who are able to decide if they want to take a gig or a session, they're doing it because having something else, whether it's owning maybe a second home that they can rent and they're involved in real estate, or any extra kind of music thing like producing or engineering. But for myself and a lot of other people, I enjoy having something that's not directly music related because as a writer, I've been able to work at least some when there have been virtually no gigs or sessions. There's been a few sessions, but not a ton.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. Interestingly, my wife is here. She never chimes in. Hey, babe.
Hey.
She specifically told me to tell you hi. She's in Alabama still, so she's watching live. Toby Simmons has just posed this question or this comment. You see that? That's an interesting point to me. Do you see that? Not too many have a plan B. I don't know that it's necessarily a plan B. To me, it's all interrelated because I never had a plan B. I just saw that I had other needs and other ways to make things happen. What are your thoughts on that?
I'd agree with what you're saying, but it's hard to speak to where somebody else's state of mind
Without a
is
doubt.
because we have our experience.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't consider it a plan B. I consider it a way to be supportive of. Yeah, I'm
Nice,
Reggie. I think whether you're in Los Angeles and you're touring with a signed artist, or if you are in a Midwestern town and you're playing bars, let's put it this way: I was supporting myself more simply by playing music when I was playing in the cover scene in Dallas,
Without a doubt. Absolutely.
than I am here.
Yeah.
But I also enjoy it because the opportunities, at least for me, the opportunities here are doing the things that I've always wanted to do. So I've gotten to go and tour in Japan. I've gotten to tour with major label artists.
Sure.
I've gotten to shoot videos. To me, it's about checking boxes off of things that I want to experience.
Absolutely.
So we often talk about in our Zoom conversations the younger guys, and they have a different experience, and they're much more involved in the social media game, at least than I am, for sure.
Sure.
And they have to sort of crack that code. But it was, at least the guys of our generation, I think it's about not expecting to be in the biggest band in the world, but how do I play and do what I want to do and keep growing and creating, while at the same time being able to pay my mortgage, having the level of life that I want to have for my family.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of that.
Absolutely. And Toby says creativity sinks in. She's exactly right. It's when I think about the way that you have done it with being a writer, I'm a tech guy. I enjoy tech stuff. So creating a web design company actually happened when I was on tour. I was on tour on a tour bus, and when you're on a tour bus, you just can't keep having the same stupid conversations over and over, and you can't keep hearing the same dumb jokes over and over. So I pulled out my laptop, and I'm a decent coder. I used to be a pretty decent computer coder, and I started learning HTML on the road just because. And one day I ended up with something like 200, I think, website clients over the course of a few years. And it was an interesting, creative way to do it and continue to make that living. So I completely agree with what you're saying. And it's interesting to me because so many of the kids that come to my drum camps, I want to do what you do. If they were to say to you, Kelly, I want to do what you do, how would you tell them to get rolling?
That's a great question. I don't know that I would know how to tell them to do what I do. I really fell into the writing thing.
No one falls into writing. No way.
Jonathan Mover.
Yeah, I wanted to know what the connection point was.
He had been my drum teacher. So again, it's all about experiences. Okay. A mutual friend of ours had connected us when I was still living in Missouri, and I was the guy who was crazy enough to play the club gigs and then fly in once a month to New York and study with Jonathan, who was basically showing me all the stuff that Gary Chafee had taught him.
That's amazing.
Gary wasn't teaching at Berklee anymore. And I had seen Jonathan in concert before, and it was exciting to go take a lesson with him, and we got along really well. And
sure.
Anyway, eventually, when he started Drumhead, he needed some LA writers, and I think he had a couple, but he still needed more. Mm-hmm. And that was early on for me in LA. I was getting plugged into the scene and meeting a lot of people, and he was looking for fresh faces. He knew people who had connections to, talk to the Vinnies and those guys, right. But he was trying to find out who was coming out on the scene and who was going to be sort of the next drum hero. And I was, at that time, almost 15 years ago now, right. I was his guy that was out all the time meeting people. And I would tell him, hey, I met this guy and he's got this gig and he sounds great and you should have somebody interview him. And after a few times, Jonathan just said, "Well, why don't you do it?" And I said, "Because I'm not a writer." And he knew that the degree that I got in school was had me writing a lot. I'd essentially written a book for part of my senior thesis. So
what degree did you get?
It was history. It was going to be history ed, and then it just became history research.
Mine is social science. So I completely, yeah,
right. So many drummers like that.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so I had, I just took a shot at it, and I wrote it, and he liked it. Jonathan's always been very adamant about he wanted drummers interviewing drummers because we have a shorthand, we have an insight, we know to ask questions that are different because we've sat in that position, we've had those questions. Mm-hmm. And so he liked it, and he was supportive enough that he kept asking me to do more and more and more. Nice. So it steamrolled into a situation where I was writing cover articles and writing for every issue.
Right.
It was just serendipitous.
Well, for the people that don't know who Jonathan is, who's Jonathan Mover?
Well, he's a great guy. He's one of my best friends. He is a drummer. He's played with Aretha Franklin and Alice Cooper and GTR and Marillion, and Joe Satriani is where a lot of people know him from.
That GTR record, dude, mm-hmm. That's where I know him from initially, and I love that record.
He just has so many great stories. I think it was like the late 80s is when he sort of came on the scene, and
right.
He was always willing to take those big risks. He moved to London and lived there for a while,
sure,
and then moved back to New York. But he's just that same guy. He's a great drummer. He's really adventurous, and it's gotten him into a lot of crazy but great musical situations as
Absolutely.
Well. And in addition to being the fantastic drummer that he is the owner and editor-in-chief of Drumhead Magazine, and has been, I think, since its inception.
I love the fact that you had the gumption to just pull up and go to New York and take some lessons. I think that's amazing.
Well, I think it's that attitude, which I know that you share, where you're just willing to go for it. I'm sure that you and probably every other drummer that's watching your show has heard, well, you might just have to get a real job and give up on a dream. And that just pissed me off enough times.
Oh my gosh, yes.
that I just kept doing really stupid things because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it and prove that they were wrong.
It's interesting too, isn't it? Because your wife is incredibly supportive of you, as mine is of me. And without the right partner in my life, and I think I'm speaking for you as well here, mm-hmm. neither of us would be able to do what we do.
Absolutely. There's been so many times that there's been a situation that's been tough.
Yeah.
And she would say, well, here's a great example is, unfortunately, we had a family tragedy on her side of the family,
right.
And she's from overseas, and so we went back there to take care of things. And while I was there, I was contacted to audition for John Fogerty.
Right.
So for a day, I didn't say anything about it. And then at some point, my wife and I were talking before bed, and she immediately said, well, that's crazy. You have to go do this.
Exactly.
And then at breakfast the next morning, we talked with her dad, and he had said, he's just as supportive, had said, not only will I drive you to the airport, but I want to buy the ticket. Mm-hmm. So yeah, support is really huge. Mm-hmm. And we get the opportunity, thankfully, to give them that same support, and
Absolutely.
We have to pay attention to that. It's not it shouldn't be an egocentric relationship and lifestyle.
That's right.
Give and take, for sure.
That's exactly right. Well, I had two kind of final questions to ask you. And one of them I prepped you for because there's a question that I've been asking everybody, and it started back in the late night learning era with people, just talking to people about things. And that is, and like I said, two questions, so don't jump. The first question is this: what was it about you that made you think, I am Kelly King, I can do this as a pro? What made you think that you had the stuff? Go ahead.
Okay. I didn't know if there were two
Yeah,
parts.
go ahead. I'll ask the other one in a minute. Although I liked the prolonged silence. That was actually pretty nice. Dramatic effect there.
I don't know that my inner monologue has ever said that sentence that you just uttered.
Yeah.
If I have a secret power, it's owning up to the fact that I'm as full of it as anybody else is. and that means that if someone else can fail, I can fail. And if someone else can succeed, I can succeed.
Mm-hmm.
I've had, we were talking about support, definitely the support of friends and family members, peers has done a lot to increase my confidence.
Sure.
I'm really attracted to confident drummers and confident musicians.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I sort of, glom some of that off of them.
Sure.
I had a situation where I was playing, I'm not sure if you want me to tell this story or not.
Any story you want to tell, I want to hear.
Okay. So I was playing with an artist in Japan,
mm-hmm.
and it was really exciting for me. Japan was definitely on my checklist of places I wanted to go, and I wanted to go there as a musician.
Sure.
And it was a big show,
mm-hmm.
so it was checking all the boxes for me again. And while we sort of traveled with a smaller crew because it's so far away, and so we did not take a monitor mix guy. There was a guy that was there who was fine. His command of English was a bit challenged, and but everything was cool. And during the sound check, I had an issue with the vocals where I was hearing two vocals that were slightly, I guess, out of phase, I would call it. I don't have the skills that you have. I don't have all that engineering tech skill, but it wasn't right. I could tell it wasn't right, and it was messing with my head.
Right.
And I wanted to get it right. Sound check, that's what the time's for.
Absolutely.
And so we were going around, everyone was checking their stuff, and I sort of kept coming back to, hey, I need to get this vocal thing fixed. It's going to mess with me. It's going to mess with the timing, with me hearing cues. And I was being a bit of a stickler about it, and nobody else in the band was mentioning it. So long story short, at some point, one of the techs came over and whispered into my ear, that's the live pitch correction that's fixing the lead vocal so that it's in tune. And so, in addition to feeling like a complete ass because I didn't know what was going on, we finished the sound check. And then as we were leaving to go back to the hotel, the lead singer had said, Kelly, can I talk with you and we take a walk on the way back to the hotel?
Good.
and proceeded to dress me down the entire trip to the point of which that's been one of my least favorite gigs of my entire life.
Wow.
And it was definitely a huge hit to my confidence.
Sure.
Now that was quickly remedied by the fact that within, I think, 3 months, I had gotten called for the King Leg audition.
Right.
And Brian Joyce, who is essentially King Leg, and Dwight, who was there at the audition. I'm sorry?
King Leg, what a great name.
Yeah, you can tell where that, you can find out where that name comes from, but it has nothing to do with me.
Fair enough. Okay.
Brian had that all on his own. Okay. But they were standing out in the hallway of AMP rehearsal after the audition, telling me that they really wanted me to do the gig, like right away.
Right.
And I'm sure they have access to a lot of great drummers. I'm not saying they made the right decision, but it made me feel really good that they wanted to have me on the gig. Absolutely. So to have someone I really respected and had for so long say the very inverse of what this other person was saying,
absolutely,
it made a huge difference, and I've definitely carried that. And the situation that happened in Japan, I'm actually really thankful for, because I learned a lot about how far I should let someone push me and how I should let someone talk to me. And whether you're playing on a tour in Japan or wherever, or you're playing in a club in Ohio,
right,
there's a certain respect that we give each other.
There is. Absolutely. It's an interesting thing, confidence, because it's so easily shattered. And I could tell story after story after story of hits that I've taken to my confidence. And I come across as a pretty confident guy and a pretty confident player, but I'm really very thin-skinned, honestly. And I take those hits pretty personally. So it'll hammer me a little longer than it probably should sometimes.
Well, and I think one of the things that you do really well and that I'm trying to do, and I think most of our peers that we really respect so much do, is it's not trying to be the greatest, but it's trying to find what your thing is, and then really excel at that. I know that I was a very different kind of player when I was living in Missouri and Dallas, and coming to LA, I really started to get inspired by drummers who were more about energy than technical facility, and more about finding the right part for the song and playing it. So these are guys like, everybody's going to mention Steve Jordan. He's one of the kings. And he made that real paradigm shift in how he approached music. And that really spoke to me. And as well, there's a Swiss drummer, Thomas Hedlund, who plays for the band Phoenix, who is just one of my all-time favorite drummers. Ronnie Vannucci Jr. from The Killers is one of my favorite drummers. But those are guys who, they can all play technically really great, but they really are, it sounds trite to say, but they're song-supportive drummers. Like, they bring something special to the song.
Sure.
And that really inspired me to try to reimagine my playing and my approach to music and take a different slant on it.
That's really cool. I love that you did that. I want to put this comment up. Take a look at that.
Only if it's a bad one.
Yeah. We're a little past it now. I just saw it come up. I think that's really awesome that Reggie decided to take his very first drum lesson. So that very thing that you're talking about with going to New York and just having the gumption to do that, Reggie did it after all those years, and I think that's freaking amazing. I had no idea.
And just so Reggie knows, when I find a drummer that I think has got something unique and interesting, I approach that drummer. I know, maybe not since COVID, but maybe in the 6 months before COVID, we both went and we saw Herman Matthews play at the Write-Off Room. Right. And I finally badgered the hell out of Herman enough to come and sit down at the drums and give me a lesson, because he's got a real thing that's amazing. And
definitely.
So I'm a big fan of taking lessons, and I plan on taking lessons as long as I'm still playing. I
do too. And in fact, as you know, Herman has been in this room on this kit recording drums, and he's coming back in a couple of weeks, I think. So that's Herman's great. He's just a great player and a great guy. For sure. I was actually going to ask you to tell a road story, but you have now done that. So I'm so glad you did. So let me ask you my final, most important question of the day. Okay, you ready? I'm soloed up on you. You ready?
Yeah.
What is your favorite Rick Springfield song?
Oh, wow. Man, I wish I would have gotten a heads up.
A lot's riding on this. Hey, Veronica, while he's thinking, how you doing? Good to see you. How's everything down in Australia?
Man, you're really going to push me on this.
For me, it's probably Affair of the Heart, just for the record. I really like that song. And you can't say Jesse's Girl, because that's...
No. It wouldn't be Jesse's Girl anyway. No. I can't believe you're asking me. Okay, I'm not gonna reference the title of the song. I'm gonna reference the film. What's the Rick Springfield film?
That was Hard to Hold, sir.
Hard to Hold. See, yes. Man, I knew
Keith Tannenbaum, you shut your mouth right now.
There's a song that's the big concert song when he walks off stage to go meet the girl. Yeah. And the only reason it's my favorite song is because that's the first time I saw Mike Baird play live drums.
All right,
in that movie. So I hope that's nerdy enough for you.
I'm down with that. I ran into Mike Baird at the DW factory one day, and I didn't put together who he was for the first 30 seconds or so of talking to him. And then this recognition happened on my face. I'm like, holy crap, you're Mike Baird. And I literally said those words.
Well, that's part of the great thing about being here in LA is we're running into all of those guys.
Right.
And
that's right.
And it's a from when we were young kind of thing. Mike's a great player.
He's a great player. Absolutely.
He's got a lot of great Jeff Porcaro stories too.
Ooh, I bet. I can't wait to hear some of that. I need to. Yeah, we haven't stayed in touch, but we do Facebook a little bit, so I'm gonna have to ask him some. We have a question from Reggie. What was your most favorite place to play in Dallas?
Oh wow. It depends on whether it was a straight ahead gig or a rock gig. So there were two. There's a place called Deep Ellum. I don't know if it's still there in Dallas, but that's sort of the original band scene.
Deep what?
Deep Ellum. ELLUM.
Oh, okay.
And it used to be the real happening original band scene. And there were two clubs that I really loved there. Trees, which there's a great video of Nirvana at Trees when I think Kurt Cobain throws his guitar at a guy.
I think I've seen that.
And Dave Grohl jumps over the drums to go beat the guy.
Reggie's saying that club is still there. So
yeah. Oh, does Reggie live there?
Paris, Texas. So.
Oh, nice. Oh man, I miss the food in Texas so bad. It's so good there. Herman and I talk about that all the time because he's a Houston guy. Right. And then there was a place called Club Dada, which was really amazing too.
I think I played that room. I've only played Dallas 4 or 5 times, but I think Dada was a place I played.
I was excited
really and kind of
yeah.
Okay.
A lot of venues hold an emotional context for me. So when I was still, I think in my first year, having moved to Dallas, I would go to a place called Blue Cat Blues because every Monday night there was a blues band, a quartet there, which was fronted by Andy Timmons, if you know who he is, great guitar player and singer.
Yeah, I think I do know who he is.
But it was Andy Timmons and the Pawn Kings, and I'm going to make sure I get this right. So Andy was the singer-guitarist who fronted the band. The organ player was James. I think his name was T.Y. I think his name was James, but they always call him T.Y.
Okay.
Mike Medina, who's a great bass player, who's also a great drummer, a UNT guy, and within the first couple of years, graduated UNT drummer named Keith Carlock. And those guys were mind-blowingly good. And I mean, you can imagine, everybody was at the level of Carlock. They're all monster players.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when I got to go play Blue Cat Blues finally, I was like, I'm there. There's everybody in a cover band has played in this club called Memphis, which is on Beltline Road in Addison, which is a part of Dallas. Okay. And same thing. I used to go. I got to know Keith, and he would say, "Oh, I'm playing with Dallas Brass and Electric at Memphis. Come out and hang." And so I'd go out and watch him play and get my mind blown. And then when I started playing in the scene, and I would play there several nights a week, it was that same thing. I'm trying to get some juju off of this, trying to soak up some of that Carlock energy.
I know. He's from Mississippi, which of course I'm from Mississippi.
Yeah.
And we never have met. Obviously, I know who he is. I don't know if he knows who I am or not, but we've run kind of in parallel circles. Can you have parallel circles in parallel planes for yeah, all right, for most of my life, and he's obviously one of the greatest drummers on planet Earth, so it's quite a thing. Question: do you know a Dallas drummer? He's actually from Louisiana, but he spent a lot of time in Dallas. His name's Timmy Dugas.
I don't know that.
Okay, just a curiosity.
He came after I did?
He would have been probably before, actually. I'm not sure. This is interesting. Take a look at what Toby just had to say. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I had heard something about that, so I hope that that's correct. That was a great place to go see, and James Gatson played there regularly. Herman. And on a given night, you would go in there and Steve Jordan would walk in to see somebody else play. I mean, that's a great venue.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Kel, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your time and for your stories and for hanging out with us tonight, okay?
I just want to apologize to everybody that watched this tonight and just say, you got to stick around for next week because it's really going to be great.
Yes, next week is going to be really great, but this week has been too.
But it's nice of you to have me on. And, if I can say one thing, I just want to say I didn't move to LA because I was at a certain level. I just moved because I wanted to try something. And I think any drummer out there can do exactly the same thing and has exactly the same possibility of success. I'd also say that success is not dependent on your being a great technical drummer or musician. It's really about a combination of things, and everybody's got to play at a certain level, but you really, the personality game, like being able to be cool with people and not being too full of yourself, and that's really huge here. Being
a good hang.
Yeah.
And you certainly are that. And you've created a culture of that. And I'm incredibly grateful to be part of it. Very much so. And from early morning freaking breakfasts to even earlier hikes. What is wrong with you? To Friday afternoon things that we do, the hang on Fridays. It's been a tremendous thing for me. So thank you for including me.
Yeah, man, it's been great for me too, and I think that we all have the potential to really help each other out in ways that we don't know, and that's part of what I'm trying to facilitate, and you're doing the same thing.
Absolutely. Well, all right, brother man, I will catch up with you later on, okay? In the meantime, I'll see you tomorrow, in fact.
Bye.
All right, see ya. All right, thanks a ton for Kelly being here. That was a really great interview. I enjoyed that tremendously. Thanks everybody for chiming in. These interviews are going a lot longer than I anticipate them going, and I love that. I'm so glad they are because it's been fun to talk and hang and listen to everybody. I'm still going to go ahead and run the new segment really quickly here and let you guys. Let's just see what happens here. This is the new segment. Let's see. Buddy's Beats. So what is Buddy's Beats? That's going to be a quick little tip about drumming because, believe it or not, this started out as a drumming show, and we've taken it other places now, which I'm so glad we have. But I wanted to talk a little bit, and this is we touched on this 2 weeks ago during the traditional grip conversation. What are ghost notes? And I wanted to just talk a tiny little bit about that in a quick thing to show you Buddy's Beats, the all new thing. And you're going to have to bear with me here as I work a little bit. I'm going to show you what the difference is. Dave Garibaldi from Tower Power, he is a proponent of what's known as two-level playing. Accents and taps. Accents and taps. That's a very rudimental way of playing. It's something that we all learn to do when we're working on exercises, hand exercises in particular. But the way that we can apply it to the drum set is those little tap notes. Those are, in fact, ghost notes. So how does a ghost note work within the context of a groove? Well, for instance, a very simple, straightforward groove. It's got a nice little drive, a decent feel, but watch what happens when I fill in the gaps. Essentially, that's what ghost notes do. They fill in the gaps, and it creates a little forward locomotion to the groove. So, without and with. So you feel that little bit of propulsion, and that really works well if you're playing up-tempo things. Those little notes don't get in the way. All they do is propel the feel of a song. So the trick is to make sure that they stay nice and low. If you let them get too big, they get in the way. They get in the way. And obviously that's designed to sound like crap. But the idea is to keep them nice and small. Get it? And if we can keep them nice and small, they really do a nice job of propelling. Probably the single greatest use of ghost notes ever. Okay, that's an overstatement. But Rosanna, the shuffle in Rosanna that Jeff Porcaro did, that without those ghost notes, that song doesn't move the same way at all. And I'm not going to play a Rosanna shuffle here. I'm just not going to embarrass myself with that. But it's a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous thing. So how do we work on them? Tap accent exercises. Here's a very straightforward one. So literally just fours, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and switching hands. And the trick about ghost notes is they live in the snare drum hand. So if you're a righty, they live in your left hand, right? So you've got to work that left hand so that you have control. Is a lot easier than if you don't spend the time working on it. So you've got to work your left hand and make it every bit as strong and controlled as your right. Just like that. So how do we create an exercise on drum set? By adding the feet on the left foot on 1, the right foot on 2. Just like that. And all of a sudden you get an exercise that makes you focus your energy on keeping your body centered and your mind engaged, which is incredibly important. A lot of the stuff that Kelly was talking about was mind engagement and how we as musicians have to engage all sides of ourselves from a career perspective, from a business perspective, and yes, from a musical one. So for us, the drummers, this is a way to do it. Just like that. Now, here's the trick. That tap, the ghost note, has got to be small. If you make them too big, you'll end up sounding like everything's kind of medium. So you got to make the big notes, the accented notes, substantially louder than the unaccented ghost notes. Versus, it's hard for me to do that. It's a little softer, but you've got to be sure that you're forcing the difference. Forcing is the wrong word. You've got to make sure that the difference is clear. Then when you add the feet, you can also switch it. Keep the feet going the same way. Like that. So immediately you've got 2 very quick exercises that will help you out with making sure that you've got your ghost notes happening. And you can then apply it all around the kit. suddenly your grooves become infinitely more interesting. And that was Buddy's Beats for the very first time, so I hope you liked the segment. And that about wraps it up. We've been over an hour tonight. That was a great conversation with Kelly, and I'm truly grateful that he was here. I got a new end credits roll for you, a new piece of music. Hope you like it. And I will see you next week when my guest is going to be Chris Hart, International Director of Artist Relations for Remo Drumheads. You will want to hear what he's got to say. Drummers, musicians, please spread the word. Tell everybody, anybody that wants to talk about endorsement deals, what they mean, how important they are, how to get them, how not to get them. Next week, Chris is going to be here. You're going to want to hear this and chime in with him and talk to him. Thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight, and I'll see you in a week.